Today we're going to talk about, in the previous workshop, when you visited Belgium, I explained how to plan a hiking trip for yourself, your family, your friends, how to explore information online or in booklets or magazines. And today, when you have formed an idea about the trail that you want to do, today we're going to talk about how to plan it in detail so you can know how much time you will need for the hiking trail. So I'm still Yannick Bos. I still am engaged in different roles in the community of the mountain sports. I'm a member of the Federation of Mountain Climbing and Hiking in Belgium. I'm also a member of the Hiking Advisor Club, Mountaineering Club, and we give a lot of presentations about the hiking elements and topics. I'm also a Wilderness Medical Associate, Wilderness First Responder, and I'm professionally engaged in the Department of the Chancellery and Foreign Affairs of Flanders at this moment. So that's who I am, but hiking advisor, explaining it again. It's a mountaineering club that wants to inform people to go on a responsible way into the outdoors, so they can enjoy hiking the safe and responsible way, multiple day hikings all over the world. So if you're very ambitious or you have a low ambition level, that's all the same for us. We just want to help you to make that trail happen, to enjoy it and do it safely. All right, the objectives of today. Already I work with a few objectives. Today, I would like to explain you a clear vision of how you could describe the trail quite accurate. So whenever you go out hiking or your friend or family goes out hiking with the information that you've written down or you've noted, so it's easy for them to follow the trail on the information that you provide. It also explains the time you will need to do the hiking trail. It will explain the challenges. Is there a difficult terrain during the hiking trail? What are the options to avoid those difficult elements in the hiking trail, and how can you return if necessary because of the trail that's not available anymore, because of a landslide, because of bad weather or other circumstances. So sometimes it's necessary to return, and that information is also provided after this lecture. You get also some tips and tricks about how to develop the route, on the basis of the information that you are providing, but also the weather circumstances. When it's foggy, it's obviously more difficult to follow a hiking trail in an open landscape. In a forest, it's easier, but in an open environment, it's more difficult. So I give you some tips and tricks. Also, when you have difficult terrain, you can't go as fast as you would in a regular hiking trail when it's very obvious. So I give a few tips and tricks about that. What is a Marsplan, as we call it in Dutch? It has a few parts, so it's not just one thing. It's multiple things. It's actually a description, like a story about the route. It's written in text. You can type or you can write it down, and also it is a map with the route on it. So it's two things. It's text and it's a visible map. It's also a calculation of the time you need to walk it. It describes the terrain. Is it going up or down? What are the distances in between several points? What is the height, the exact height? So it's not just an estimation, but it's really exact. What are the difficult elements in the trail? Is there a river crossing? Is there a part with which used to be an avalanche area or things like that. It also indicates compass direction in bad circumstances, in bad visibility circumstances. That could be during the night when the night falls or it's dark in the morning. It can also be because it's foggy or it's snowing or other things like that, heavy rain, heavy wind. So sometimes it's necessary to have your compass bearing and the indication of the compass needle. It helps you orientate and to locate yourself on the route, on the hiking trail. And perhaps sometimes it looks quite theoretical, but in general, whenever you prepare yourself for the hiking trail and you make the Marsplan, then you will experience in the worst circumstances that it's very helpful. In worst circumstances, in bad weather, or when something happens and you have to try to process all the information that is written down in the Marsplan, then it's very difficult in those situations. So you want to do it in advance. You want to do it before you go onto the hiking trail. Whenever someone asks you, is it still a long time before we get to the top? It's very nice when you can say yes or no. If you say, I have to calculate it, that's very difficult under stressful circumstances. If someone's tired or needs some help and you take more time for a certain part of the hiking trail, then it's also handy for you to have a Marsplan that indicates the alternative route and says, okay, whenever we do this or that route, then it's easier and we will be there in time at our destination. So it's also very important, not only for yourself, but also for the people that go along. This is a visual presentation about a Marsplan. It's the left is obviously a map indicating the route, the pink marked route. It also marks some spots and numbers to indicate which part of the route is this. It also indicates some shelters, so it's a very handy thing. This is a compass barrier to know which mountaintop is at what direction at a certain point. This is a profile of the height, the elevation. Is it going steep up? Is it going slow down? What's the evolution during the hiking trail? So this is for a multiple day hike, obviously, because I guess none of you are planning to do a hike of 158 kilometers a day with more than 5,500 meters of elevation. So it's not that easy. So it's very interesting to know, am I going to walk all day upwards, or am I going to switch between hiking upwards or downwards? In the region you're living and developing the hiking trail, I'm estimating that it's more going up and down a few times every day. This is actually a very important element of the Marsplan. It's the schematic of the route. It indicates every significant point on the route. It explains in text what is happening, what can I see, what can I experience during this part of the route. It has very important information about the compass direction. It also indicates the height. It indicates the distance, continuing with all the information about how much time you will need to do the hiking trail. We think we're just doing it for ourselves, but that's not true. It's for yourself and the people that come along during the hiking. It gives them a structure. It gives you structure of what will the day be looking like, what is the elevation during the day, What is the duration of the hike? Will it take us 4 hours? Will it take us 6 hours? How many difficult elements are in the route? And continuing all those things. Yeah, it's combined in one just small paper. Whenever you need to go back, you also have that information with you. You don't have to start calculating how much time. If I start returning from this point on, it's indicated in the Marsplan. Whenever you have young people or your family that stay behind because they won't come along during your hiking, but they're very curious. If you do a multiple day hike, where are you? Are you going as planned? Where would you be tonight? And they have all those questions. But if they have the Marsplan, they can use it to follow your trail. If you just can say, I'm as planned going to the village of, I don't know how it's called, or you're going past the hotel or of a certain place, in a certain place, well, they can see, oh, everything is going as planned. That's great. That's fun. That's good. But whenever you do something and you're not doing it as planned, and you can inform them about, like, yeah, I'm 1 day behind my schedule, and you have to catch an airplane a few days later, yeah, are they going to catch that airplane in time? Will they finish in time? All those questions are very handy whenever they have a Marsplan. In a previous workshop, I told you you can always have a main focus on the trail, a main trail, but you can also develop alternative routes. Well, if you developed an alternative route that makes a shortcut, and you have that also indicated on the Marsplan, then you will notice that your family that stayed behind, they will be, yeah, okay with it. They won't worry about it. Otherwise, they will probably worry if they don't have that information. You can also develop the Marsplan not only for yourself and the people that stay behind, but you can also give it to the emergency services. It's also interesting, always interesting, whenever there is something happening and your family calls the emergency services, if they can send the Marsplan to the emergency services by email, it's a lot easier to go find someone that got lost during the hiking trail. If you have a Marsplan, it's very clear that, yeah, you are in a certain area, you will be following that trail. It is described in the text, it's planned on a map. So it's most of the times it's for a search and rescue team, it's very handy because they know we don't have to search in that area because they have passed in that area. We are day 3. So in day 3, they should be between point A and B on that map. So it's very handy to have that overview for the emergency services. There is an article in an English magazine where there are 2 situations, and probably I told you about it. In very bad weather, 2 people got lost. One had an exact point of location because he prepared himself and he could just text it to the emergency services, and he was found within 30 minutes. Like in 30 minutes, that's very fast. Even when it's bad weather, 30 minutes takes a long time because you get cold, you get wet, but that person didn't really hurt. Yeah, he was cold, but everything went well. Another person didn't prepare that much, had no indication of location, had no Marsplan, so he had to guess and to estimate where he was. And it took them multiple hours to find him into the darkness, in the rain, in the wind. And when they found him, after the few hours that passed, he was not only cold, he was hypothermic, and he was. It took him multiple days to recover. So that's the difference between a very good Marsplan, where you plan everything quite into detail, or if you don't. So sometimes it's a lifesaver. Het routeschema of the planning and the scheme of the planning of the route itself. As I said before, it's the visual is on the right corner and and right head corner. It's an overview, like when you would walk it yourself. Remember that I talked about looking at Google Maps for the hiking trail. What does it look like? Well, you can look at the map. You can see, I'm walking upwards. I'm walking into a forest. I will be walking, on the southern part of me will be a very small river. After 200 meters at my right hand side, I will probably see a small cabin or something else. All the things that you can see, or you can see on the map, or you would be seeing in reality because you looked at Google Maps, you can describe. And that description is the text that you write down between point A and point B, the first part of your hiking trail. You also indicate, am I going south, north, east? So that's something important because, whenever I describe I'm walking next to the river, but I don't describe that it's on my right or left hand side, or it's not on the north or the southern part of me. Well, I could be walking in two directions next to the river, and one's right and the other's wrong. So it's very important to indicate exactly in what direction should I be walking from A to B. The time that I would need to do that part of the hiking trail, that's also described on this planning instrument. It's just an estimation of the tempo that you would walk. We will see in a moment what time we will need for a few kilometers when you don't have elevation, but we also indicate what time you would be needing, the time that you need to go upwards and downwards. So it's very important that those elements are very good described in this planning instrument. You don't do it for the whole trip at once, but you divide it in. Every day has a planning instrument for every day. So when you would develop the hiking trails in Romania, it would be very interesting to make this planning to use this planning tool for every day of hiking in one direction, and if possible also in the other direction. So it's a very important tool because everyone could be using the same tool. So you have to make it once and it will be used many times. Obviously, a day, a hiking trail for one day is not just a straight line. You have corners, you have situations that you go upwards and then you are on the top of the hill, and then afterwards you go downwards. You have easy parts in the hiking trail. Perhaps there are difficult parts in the hiking trail. You have a village that you have to cross. All that information is quite complex if you have to describe it all in detail. But if you do it very good, then you divide your hiking trail, the hiking day, in even more small parts. You can go from A to B, and B is the first crossing, perhaps, or is a corner on the trail, or it is a very important visible thing that you can look at to navigate and to orientate yourself on. Perhaps a church. Whenever you go hiking, it's always handy to have a church or a religious building as an element of navigation. Afterwards, you go from the church to the other next point, and that's point C. And you go from C to D. Well, for every part from A to B, you make a description. You indicate the orientation north, east, south, west. You also calculate the time you would need, and you would go give also the bearing in degrees for your compass. You also do that for the other direction. Well, for point B to point C, you do exactly the same, and so on and so on and so on. The first time you have to do this, it will take you a lot of time. It will probably take you multiple hours to make it for just one day. But once you get the hand of it, it's very easy. And like me, I guess I can make a max plan for a whole trip of 5-6 days in an hour and a half now. So after a few times that you've used the instrument, it's easy to use, and you can, you get used to it. It's like driving a car. The first time it's difficult. The second time it's also difficult, but it's a bit easier. And the fifth time, it's also still a bit difficult, but it takes you less time to get used to the traffic, and everything goes easier than before. Let's take this map. We have a small part in Germany, I guess. Every point you can see is a very important point, because there's always something changing. You have a direction, you start. You have a crossing over here, so that's point B. Afterwards, you have also a crossing, but you also have a change of direction. So that's the next point you want to mark on your map. That's point C. Here we have two roads nearby each other, but that's point D, because you can change, you can be wrong. So it's very important to indicate next point. And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Every part has a separate description. This is A to B. I have a description. I have my bearing. I have my elevation. Okay. I do the same for this part. And afterwards, I do the same for this, and this, and this. And whenever you have done that, you can accumulate the times of walking. You could accumulate the distances, and then you have an overview of the whole hiking trail of that day to get from A to B, from B to C, and so on. Just in detail, because it's very complex. It looks complex, but actually it's a very simple tool. You have an arrow indicating what I'm talking about. So you always indicate for every day what is the starting point and what is the point of where I end my day. It could be a campsite, it could be a village, it could be anything, but you describe it as indicated on the map, so that you would recognize it whenever you arrive there, but also people at home, when you say, I have arrived at my location, that they know, so you were in that village. Okay, that's nice. And how is that village? And things like that. Then you have the indication of the speed that you would, the speed whereby you will do elevation or you go downwards, but also the speed that you would need in meters per hour when you just have a flat road and when there is no elevation at all. In general, we say that you would need 350 meters an hour, that you can do 350 meters going up every hour. So whenever you have 700 meters between your starting point and the point of the top of the hill, well, it probably will take you at least 2 hours. When you go down, we say that you can, we estimate that you could go down in 1 hour 550 meters. Going down most of the times goes a lot faster than going up. So if I go down for 1 hour, I could do elevation difference of 550 meters going down. Whenever the road is flat, I have no elevation, I have no difficult terrain, then a normal tempo is 4 kilometers an hour or 4,000 meters an hour that I could do. And everyone that's a bit calculating says, yeah, but I'm going up. but I'm also doing some distance. So I have to combine those two. That's correct. We will go into that in a few moments. You indicated how you calculate the tempo, because the tempo can differ. And why could it differ? Because you have bad weather, because you have difficult terrain, because you know that you have a child with you. If a child doesn't walk as fast as you, well, then you will need to adjust that tempo. Whenever you're not really in very good physical shape, you can also take a slower tempo, but it's very important that you describe it in the Excel in the overview. Well, the description I told you a few times. It's between point A to B. In this case, it says I'm going down to the from the bivac spot next to Karajachev Cook, and then I take route 1. That's marked route in northern direction to Shirivena at an elevation of 1641 meters. If I would do it again, describing it again, I would also say I would be there on the top of a hill, because it's very important to indicate the ending point of that part of the trail. What is also very important, in a previous workshop about safety, I told you about the emergency services. The number of the emergency services is always handy to have with you. If you have to look into that whenever you don't have internet on a mountain, well, try to find the number of the emergency service when you're under stress. It's very difficult. But if you do it at home and you use Google and you find the emergency number, you could just write it down. And then whenever something happens, you just have to look at the paper, just dial it, and perhaps you get connection. Don't have all the fuss of searching the emergency numbers. You could write down multiple numbers, the 112, which is generally used in Europe, but you can also use a specific number of the specific emergency services in that region. In Switzerland or in Austria, they have specific numbers for specific regions, so it's very handy to write it down. The elevation that you need to get to, so point B is higher or lower. In this case, it is lower, so you would go down a bit. This point is also lower, so you go down a bit. And that's very important because then you can use that information to indicate your steepness of the route. The compass direction. Whenever you don't know really for sure, am I going north, south, or you need something more specific because there is a place that you could fall down. You don't want to go too much east, but you would like to also not go north. Well, then you have something in between. If you could mark that with your compass direction, because you can use that on a map, you could indicate on a map A to B, that's walking in that direction. You can exactly describe it with a number in degrees, and that number in degrees you could write in this column, in this cell. And then from B to A, whenever you have to return, it's also handy to have the compass direction in the other direction. And that one you write down in this cell. The distance on the map, that's indicated in not in meters but in millimeter, because a map is just as big as a meter and a half. Well, we would be needing a lot of maps to have the whole area indicated, but it's always on scale, and that's why we do it in millimeters. You write it down, and then you calculate how would it be in real life. Well, it would be this in distance. I know this could be experienced as quite difficult, but in general, whenever you start writing down, calculating, and whenever you think along, most of the times it's well managed. This is also the way all the hiking guides, the booklets, are developed. the description in the booklet is based on this system. The calculation of the hours and elevation is also based on this system. All right. The difficult part is coming now. This slide indicates whenever you have to remember you're going from point A to point B. That's it. We're not talking about the whole day. We're just talking about a small part of the hiking trail today. The first step between point A and B is to measure in detail, in millimeter, how long is that part on the map. Some people use a small piece of rope because then you can adjust the corners, you could just adjust the cord just along the line of the hiking trail. And then they measure the length of that part of the rope. You could also do it with a small metric instrument, but that's not as easy because then you have a lot of flaws in measuring the distance. But that is step one, or step zero. I'm sorry, step zero. You measure the distance in millimeters between point A and point B. Then you write it down, like say, I have 10 millimeter. Okay, 10 millimeter, I write down 10 millimeter. When I go look at the map, there is a scale on the map. And if the scale says 1 centimeter is in real life 250 meters, well, then I know what I've measured would be in real life 250 meters. Okay. Step one coming up next. Step zero is just calculating the distance in millimeters. Step one is calculating the time I would be needing for that distance. I'm not even talking about elevation, I'm just talking about distance. In this case, 1 centimeter, okay. In an hour, I do 4,000 meters in general for an hour. So that means that I do 1 kilometer in a quarter, in 15 minutes. But it's not a quarter, it's it's not a kilometer, it's just 1/4 of the kilometer. So it's 1/4 of the 15 minutes. So it's about 4 minutes to do that distance of 250 meters. So it's like mathematics. Step two, you calculate the difference in height between point A and B. Let's say that point A is at 0 meters and point B is at 350 meters. Then I know, because I've indicated I do 350 meters an hour of elevation, then I will know, okay, in step two is the time for the elevation. Well, I have 1 hour needed to do that from A to B. But now I have a time of a few minutes combined with the time of elevation. Now I have to calculate them together. But if I just add them up, I would have always too much time in my planning. That's not realistic. So what we always do is we take the smallest number of time, we divide it in 2, and we add it to the highest number in time. So in this case, it would be 1 hour that we add to the half of 4 minutes, and that is 2 minutes. 2 minutes and an hour. That's 1 hour and 2 minutes. I will just have an example in a few moments, but it's very important that you know that you always divide the smallest number of time and not always the same, not the distance or the height. It's the smallest number of time that you divide into 2, because then the estimation has less faults. In the first time, it's always difficult and you will be making mistakes, but that's no problem. We will try together. So, in general, these are the estimated times that you would need of you could do in 1 hour. Well, this is an theoretical example because in general, yeah, whenever you have tourists, you want people enjoying the route and they don't want to be rushing. So that's why I would advise not to use the left information about calculating the hours, but the right one. Why? It will take them perhaps less time than you indicate, and that is a success. If people will be needing more time than indicated and they will be later as planned, they feel like they failed. So in that way, I would suggest to use this to calculate the planning of the route. Otherwise, you have perhaps, let's say, a calculation of 6 hours needed to do the trail, but people will be doing 7 hours, and every day they feel like they failed for an hour. They will be rushing, and we don't want that. So whenever you say you will probably need, let's say, 7.5, 8 hours to do the trail, and they arrive after 7 hours, they feel like victory. They've won. They are doing it faster than is planned. And that's something especially children or young adults find very important. So if you use a formula to calculate the time that you would need to do the hiking trail, always adjust the tempo at a lower pace. It will be experienced as a success. Otherwise, people will find themselves as a failure and they don't like it. Well, this is an example. Let's say that we have 24 kilometers in our trail. This is in general. So this is between A and point Z, not A and B. This is in general. We will be calculating the time of the distance. Let's say that we will walk 4 kilometers an hour. Then we will be needing 6 hours to do that hiking trail. But there is elevation in that hiking trail. So we have to adjust this timing. Step 2 is calculating the difference in height. And let's say that we have in this trail 700 meters of elevation and 500 meters that we're going down. Let's say that we will elevate at 350 meters an hour. That will take us 2 hours to get up, to get that elevation difference behind us. We also have 500 meters of going down. And let's say that we do this at 500 meters an hour. We will be needing 1 hour to go down. In total, for the elevation differences, we have 2 hours plus 1 hour. That's 3 hours. If we just add that to the 6 hours, then we would have a day of hiking for 9 hours. That would be not really realistic. But remember, we would be dividing the smallest number into 2. So we have the 3 hours that we divide into 2, and we have 6 hours. Combined, it takes us 7 hours and 30 minutes. In general, when a regular pace is used to do the hiking trail, we will be doing it in 7 hours and 30 minutes. This is without the pauses that you can plan into your hiking trail. Let's say that you would need at least a few pauses of 15 minutes, then you would be gone for the day for 8 hours and 30 minutes. It means when you start at 9 o'clock, you would be in the evening, you would be arriving. So this is just one example. You can also adjust the tempo by lowering this, because you would estimate that you go up slower than as planned. Or this one, you could say, I'm going down quite fast, so I can adjust this and say, I'm going down for 600 meters an hour. Well, this will change. Perhaps I can explain that whenever you have different hiking trails developed and you have a very good map of the area, then it's quite easy for me to develop you the time schemes for a hiking trail. So I could always help with that. That's something I'm just adding now. Well, when you have a booklet or you have a digital presentation of the hiking trail, you don't only want to inform people about how much time they will need and if there is difficult terrain, and you don't want just a description. You also want a very beautiful overview of the map. You have digital options for all that. You have Alpenverein Actief, you have Komoot, you have different apps for that. So that's not very difficult to do. What is very important that you indicate on that map? Every mark, every point that's very important, change of direction, a crossroad, the dangerous area, everything like that, you have to indicate it on the map. You could also inform people about the time on the map between those different points, so they don't really need the text, but they can use the map and know, well, I've done A to B, B to C. Perhaps can I manage to get to the top? Oh yeah, I can, because the time is indicated on the map for every part of the hiking trail. Oh, I will be at the top just after midday. So okay, that's fine. We can have lunch over there. So it's very important that all the information on the map is the same as in the described, the text, the written text. Otherwise, people would get, they will be misinformed, or they will say like, oh, the information is not correct on the map, or the information is not correct in the text, and you don't want to create a fuss about it. You want them to be, you want to be helpful. So that's why it's very important to compare the text and the visual. They have to be the same. They have to contain the same information. It also is important that you know, well, for me, the map works fine. And someone else will say, well, I can't read the map, but I can read the text. So if the text is very clear, I would like to use the text. And already, I mentioned it, you always do this for the whole day. You don't mix up days, because that's very confusing. Some people want to know, because they are afraid of height, or they don't have very good physical condition. They want to know the evolution of the elevation. Is it going up quite steep? Is it going down quite steep? Is it an easy elevation, or is it difficult? Whenever you have a visual about it, and it's very easy to make it, because the line x is indicating the distance, and y is indicated the height. You just have to point it out, because you have calculated the distance, you have calculated the height. It's very easy to make this profile about the route. Use the alternative routes and prepare them in advance. You also make a Maxplan also for the alternative routes. But when you're on the hiking trail and perhaps you don't have alternative routes, because sometimes that just happens, well, you could recalculate. If you start all over again, and you would say, well, normally as planned, I would be using 6 hours. But if I recalculate that every day we arrive 1 hour late, let's adjust this. When I see that my next day is 8 hours and a half walking, the day afterwards is 9.5 hours walking, because I just have added 1 hour. That's the easiest way to add it and just compare it. And is that doable? Well, I guess when you know that 8 hours and a half walking is quite intense, 9.5 is really intense, then you have to calculate that you have to start earlier in the morning, or you have to develop alternative routes. You don't only have to adjust it for your planning of the day, you will also need to indicate it to the people that you handed your Marsplan to. If you hand your Marsplan to others, it's very important that they know that you have recalculated and have adjusted your routes or your planning. Most of the times, it's very handy to just start earlier on the day. Whenever you start at 10 o'clock and you always come down the mountain or the hill of the trail and it's always dark, well, just start earlier. Start perhaps the first half an hour in the darkness, and end the day in sunlight. That's always nicer. You can also adjust taking the pauses, the breaks. Whenever you stop, every time you see a butterfly or you see a very interesting plant, it will take you a lot of time because you will be standing still a long time. If you accumulate all those few minutes that you stop to take a picture, sometimes whenever you have a good rhythm, just continue that walking rhythm and don't stop. Take the picture when you're walking. Don't stop to take the picture. It will also help you to be on time because all those small things also take time. So it's very important that you think about that. Will I be taking a lot of pictures? And the day planning says 8 hours and a half walking. Perhaps you would consider a smaller part of the route or an alternative route that way. Well, let's come to the takeaways already. Make sure that you have a very good description for every part of the hiking trail. A very good textual, written text, and also a very good plan, a visual overview of the route. Describe whatever you see. I'm walking on a hard road. I'm walking on a small forest track. I'm walking on a very steep sandy hill or a dune. I'm walking next to trees. I'm walking into the forest. I'm walking next to a river. All those details you just indicated on the map, you indicated in the written text. I'm passing a farm. I'm passing a signpost. Every detail that you can describe, you will describe, and it makes it easy for a child to look at the map and look at the paper, read it out loud, and they can follow the trail. Please explain it in simple language, because whenever you're sick and you hand it to a friend or to your children, and your children can manage to read it, well, then you're safe and you can continue and you can have a very nice day. Do the description, if possible, in 2 directions. I know that takes a lot of time, but whenever you are not sure, am I going from A to B or from B to A? Well, if you have it in 2 directions, it is a lot easier. I should recommend, because you are developing hiking trails, that someone describes it in the other direction and the other describes it in the one direction. You compare the texts, and normally the only thing that should be different would be the direction of description. But all the rest, information about underground, the field is the forest, all those things should be similar. And then you can just choose the most important text, the thing that is most explainable. So that would be very handy for you guys developing trails. Also give the information about the distance, the elevation, the time, and always for every part that is indicated on your text or on your map. So from every important point, from A to B, from B to C, from C to D. It's also very interesting when you're developing the hiking trip. Previously, I already explained it's very important to provide places to have a break, because then you can put a trash bin over there, or you can put services over there, or shops or things like that. You can also indicate where the public transport is. Try also to inform people in your Marsplan about that if their people are having a hard time, and after 2/3 of the hiking trail, they're saying, oh, we are very tired. We would like to choose an alternative route. And they know after 5 minutes of walking, there will be a bus stop and the bus will be coming in 2 hours. Well, perhaps they can have a long break, enjoy the sun, go to the bus stop and take the bus, and they had a very nice day. If you don't indicate it on your written text or in the map, well, people would be assuming, well, there are no services, there is no alternative. You don't have that option. And then afterwards, they see, oh, there was that option. Well, that's a pity. That's not something we want. We want people to experience a very fun experience. So provide the information. It's also handy to indicate when is the bus coming. Is it coming twice a day? Is it coming every hour? Is the train station? Is it possible to get to a taxi over there if you don't have public transport over there? And things like that. If you have information about food and supplies or a water source, a lake, all those things could be interesting because people, especially families with children, they want to walk from milestone to milestone to milestone. And those milestones are the breaks. So if they know we can go play in a field, or we can go play in a lake, well, for children that is very important, and for the parents also, because then they know, well, children, if we continue for half an hour, then you can play as much as you want. But now we want you to walk from A to B, and when we arrive at B, well, there is a lake, and there you can play into the water, or you can play at the board of the water. That's very handy for them. So indicate it also in the text. Calculate the time always in the same manner. Use the formula that we just described. For easier parts, you could hold on to the regular formula, but when there are hard parts, because the underground is very difficult, because you can experience navigation problems or things like that, well, adjust the formula and make the tempo lower, calculate it so that you have more time to do that part of the hiking trail. Also explain which parts will be difficult, which parts will be easy, and even give them some certain tips about how to do that part of the hiking trail. I give an example. At the left side of the flank, you have a small trail, and when you take a lower route, it's a bit wider. We advise people with children to take the wider road. Experienced hikers, we would advise to take the left road because it's more adventurous. Everyone knows I can choose both, but I have an indication of which is more to my liking.